Thank you. My question is, can you expound just a little bit more on the kinship between Judaism and Christianity?
Sure. So I don't really know. I mean, kinship can be taken many ways, right? Kinship can be taken many ways. I'll tell you, the similarities are, we share about 24 books, right? 24 of them. That's a lot. Each one of those books, every single line, you go line by line by line, and you'll get deeper and deeper and deeper meaning between every single line, especially the 5 books of Moses. Have any of you ever really studied the 5 books of Moses, like in a deep way? You could read, it's like an ocean. You could swim on the surface, you can go a mile, 2 miles down. Everything is deep in there, right? We share that, right? You are children of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, as am I, as is every Jew, as is every Christian, right? There's a kinship in spirituality. We all pray to the same God. That matters a lot. We try to do deeds that help others. We're all in the Tselem Elohim, the shadow of God. We're in the image of God, all of us. What we don't share, I would say, if anything, it might be even a better question, because we share so much. I would say what we don't share more than anything else is the oral law, right? That's what we don't share more than anything else. We spend a lot of emphasis on Judaism, on the oral law, and in Christianity, that's just not there. It's non-existent, which is fine. It's a different belief system. But that's what we don't share. But we share so much. And if we're going to concentrate on what we share, then I think we could probably go on for hours on everything we share.
Thank you. That's exactly a great answer. I appreciate that. Okay, it's your turn. Who wants to go first? Who has a question? Eddie?
So my question is directed to both speakers. Can you expound on the current land issue that's happening in Israel, especially now we're moving forward, and how much U.S. politicians, especially the current or the future Trump administration, can actually be an impetus in just fulfilling God's prophecy when it comes to the land issue?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. All you. I'll do it. I don't care. Don't give a rabbi an opportunity to speak. He'll never stop. You got to be careful here.
So, when we're talking about Middle Eastern politics, what most of the world is focusing on is a two-state solution, because we think that that's just. But God's justice is not our own justice.
Right.
If God is sovereign and God is just, justice is whatever God decides. So if he has chosen a particular people group to put on a particular piece of land, that's his decision. And we know that even through some of the parables that Jesus was teaching about, there's a landowner that gave a talent to one guy and 5 talents to another and 10 talents to another, and then they were judged on how they did on each of them. Well, that's not fair. They didn't start with all the same thing. Well, it's not about fairness in our mind, as far as fairness is, justice is not equality. And so in my mind, it goes back to the covenant. Now, secondly, if there was going to be a two-state solution, up until this point, the Palestinian Authority has been offered statehood 5 times, and they've refused it every time. So it's difficult to say we're going to have a two-state solution and give you some of the land when, well, they don't really want it. Most recently, just a few years ago, in fact, I was actually confirming this through a mutual friend, Brian Morrow, that works with the rabbi. Egypt, soon after Sisi came into power, he offered the Palestinian Authority undeveloped land on the north side of Egypt that was connected to Gaza that would have increased the landmass of Gaza by 5%. They would have had a deep water seaport. They would have had everything that they needed. And the Palestinian Authority says no. And because of how the Arab world views shame and dishonor, and if you offer something, in the Arab world you offer a great gift, and it's turned down, then it's embarrassing. If they say no, it's an embarrassment to them, and so it was suddenly denied by everybody. So I contacted Ryan, and I said, look, you're in the State Department, and you have some of the contacts. Did this happen or not? And he said, oh, it most definitely was about to. Secretly, the U.S. State Department was excited. The Israeli government officials were like, this might be over. Like this could end today. Anyhow, it didn't happen. It's difficult to have a two-state solution when one isn't really interested in the state. That's something we can go on and on about, but I'll let you add anything that you might want to add to.
Listen, I mean, the only one thing, not to pick on a word you said, because I know you didn't mean it literally, but justice is the Jewish land.
Yes.
That's justice. It's justice in every way. The Chumash says, "Tzedek tzedek tirdof." You should go after righteousness, And the Jews are the righteous owners of that land, and we will always be the righteous owners of that land. To bring that down we have to be confident of that. We have to know that God didn't make a mistake by putting us there. We're there, and we're going to stay there, and no one's going to kick us off that land. And God's got our back.
Yes.
So the question is, how do we now that's going to happen, and that is what's happening. Now how do we play our role in that happening? Was what the question that was asked. How do we play a role in that happening? So I think that we got to support whoever's in political power. Now we have someone who, in my viewpoint, is going to be very favorable to Israel. I know a lot of his foreign policy advisors, and we actually have influence there over them. As a matter of fact, on the highlight reel, you saw Waleed Ferris, who was on the Hannity show with Rafael Shore, who's my partner, and that was an hour special. Waleed Ferris is basically the number one person handling policy for Israel in the Trump administration, and he was on our advisory board. It shows how close there can be a kinship here. And he's a Christian. He's a Lebanese Christian. So what we need to do is we got to support the administration. We got to support the administration. We got to support our policymakers as much as possible. When a BDS comes up on campus, we have to make sure that BDS is outlawed in every one of the states. We're already there. It's something that all of y'all can do. You can write legislators, state legislators, say we don't want BDS is not constitutional. It should be outlawed. It should be outlawed. And I mean, the capital of Israel is Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I think I'm on. Not sure. I think y'all can hear me. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Diane. Thank you guys. That was. I think we need to discuss anything else. No. We're done. Yeah. No, I'm just teasing because that's the biggest issue. That's the heart of everyone here. So, Diane, you have a question. So your turn.
Oh.
Okay.
What's your
We're
question?
done.
Well, in line with that, in speaking of the land and it not being divided, after the 6-day war, the Temple Mount was given to the Muslim people. I know that there's a movement in Israel to begin rebuilding the temple that's been going on for a number of years, and I know that there's not agreement among people that live in Israel about the timing of this, and I'm sure it's a political issue. But I was wondering what the situation actually is in the land concerning the rebuilding of the temple.
Have at it.
Listen, I'm not up on the politics of what's happening right now. I can tell you that without God's immediate hand and intervention, there will be no temple built on the Temple Mount right now. I don't know. I'm aware of what you're talking about, but the key is that temple will be there. In my terminologies, in the Jewish terminology, when the Mashiach comes, right? That's when that temple will be built. It could happen one of the things, again, one of the differences between Judaism and Christianity is the nuance. It's not just a nuance; it becomes a very big difference, actually, in prophecy. In Judaism, any positive prophecy has to happen, and any negative prophecy does not have to happen. Right? The third temple will be built. Has to happen. You'll be kicked out of your land. Doesn't have to happen. It's because of our free will. We made bad decisions. We got kicked out of our land. So I'll tell you the third temple is going to be built. How is it going to be built? I don't know. The more positive commandments we do, the better we are to our brethren, the quicker it will be built. That much I can tell you. And I think it's a metaphysical thing. I don't think it's a physical thing. I think when God wants that there, it will drop down from the sky, or he'll enable us to build it in a peaceful way.
I'll add briefly to that with those, was it 35 acres or so, some of the most contested, it is the mountain of the Lord. It is Mount Moriah. It's the place where God gathered the tribes to him. If you read in Isaiah, when it's talking about, it's a passage that we often relate to Lucifer, one of the things that he says is, I'm going to set my throne above God, and I'm going to sit on the Mount of Assembly. Where in Israel do you think the Mount of Assembly is? So God is saying the Mashiach is going to be there, the Messiah is going to rule from there. Lucifer is saying, you know what? I'm going to rule from there. So in terms of sort of spiritual warfare, as we say, it is the pinnacle on the earth. And it's an excellent barometer, I think, of where we're at in the times. I have a photo from 1933 that shows the Temple Mount being used as a cabbage patch by the Muslim landowners that were there. And now suddenly it's the most important place, and on and on. And so, as recently as 16, 17 years ago, I had friends that could go into the Dome of the Rock and see what was going on there. Now you need to talk to King Hussein, and there's all sorts of other crazy things. My point is that the spiritual dynamics there are changing in such a fast way, and that in itself is, if there's such opposition to the establishment, at least from a spiritual standpoint, of the establishment of the temple, of the Messiah reigning in Jerusalem, there's something that's going on there. So I'm agreeing with the rabbi in that God is going to have his way. He's going to do exactly what he said he's doing, because anytime he makes a promise, regardless of the promise, his own character is on the line. And I say often to groups like this is that when it comes down to it, God is not, as much as we like to think so, God is not all about Israel. God is all about himself. It's all about his character, his name, his faithfulness, his promise. He's just chosen a particular people group to demonstrate what his character is like to the rest of the world. They're special to him. This should be special to us. So it's less so much about the people, although the people are valuable. And we pray, we join our hearts with that as it's a part of our own heritage. But ultimately it comes back to God showing himself faithful on the earth. And he's chosen the city of Jerusalem to do that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, we have about 10 more minutes for Q&A, so Brent, you can go next.
Just to follow on the same one, you may not like this one, but the thought is the Dome of the Rock's off center. It would take one day to build a functioning temple if we do something like what they had in the desert, where you can have the tent put up. That's how you call the wedding people. I'm sure they could roll that out. But I've heard that posed, because the general thought is that you have to build this big building, or as you said, drop down to heaven. But just any thoughts on things? I'd always been Jesus, this will take a long time. You have to get Dome of the Rock has to go. You have to build it, and all of a sudden it's like, it is off center, and there's a plaza there that's completely unused.
It had to be a tabernacle.
Curveball question.
All right, I'm gonna hit it out of the park. So this is a thing, all right? That question is a good question, but let me give you some Jewish theology behind the question, right? Tabernacle, right? Tabernacle, that's what we're talking about. Tabernacle, the traveling tabernacle. Now, that is when the Jews were told how to build that tabernacle. It was tough, man. It wasn't so easy. It was very challenging. Why? Because just like there's 39 categories of work, and there's 39 categories of work that we cannot do on Shabbos, right? You can't build, you can't proactively use electricity. There's 39 of these categories. So those are the 39 categories that were made, how a tabernacle was made. Okay? 39 categories how a tabernacle was made. And we say that we're not allowed to do that on Shabbat because what is Shabbat? It's God's day of rest. It's a day that he stopped creating. Creating is that 39 ways. That defines creation. Everyone got that? Okay, it was hard. You guys got it? You want me to say it again? Should I say it again?
Yes.
All right. There's 39 categories of creation. There's those 39 categories of creation were how the tabernacle was built. Okay? Those same 39 ways of creation are the things that we cannot do on Shabbat. That's why it's considered God's day of rest. Okay? So, just to build that tabernacle, just to build it would mean almost nothing. Right? You have to build it the exact right way, how God said to do it. As a matter of fact, Moses, the greatest man who ever lived, he didn't understand a lot of it. Or at least parts of it. He didn't understand it. He had Saul there to help him, who was very young, to do the craftsmanship. It was tough. The menorah, if you remember, he didn't even know how to make that thing. He had to throw it into the fire, and it had to get spit out. He didn't even understand it. So the thing in today's day, where we're so far away from God, that we could understand how to build a tabernacle, ain't going to happen. Now, we could build something that kind of looked like it, but it won't have the divine dwelling of God on it. So what you really need is the Messiah to come to teach us how to make it. Right? When the Messiah comes to teach us how to make it, and there's world peace, the Jews come back from foreign lands, that's when you're going to have the times that we're hoping for, or praying for, and we're expecting in the Messianic era. But all those things have to happen. Make sense? Did I hit it out of the park? Yeah. Ah, baby.
Good.
Well, we have time for one more question.
Okay.
All right, Kyle.
I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but
You're not going to say whatever you want to say. It's okay.
just because I love Israel and I love the Jewish people, how do you respond to Jesus, to Yeshua? Who do you think that he is, or he was? Because we're putting all of our faith in him as the Messiah who's come, and I hear you say that you're waiting.
Mm-hmm. So
that's just,
So,
as a rabbi who's learned all the scriptures.
I wish I learned all the scriptures.
Well,
but from a rabbinical side, what's the Jewish viewpoint of Jesus? Is that, can I encapsulate your question that way?
Even you personally, as someone.
Well, I'm not going to. I mean, I'm going to speak on the shoulders of the rabbis who are much greater than me.
Just honest, like.
Oh, I'm honest. I mean, I speak in front of Christmas trees.
Yeah. And then I have a follow-up is how can we pray for you, knowing that?
How can you, and then the follow-up was how can Christians pray for Jews in particular?
Or you-
Jews? Me?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'll tell you how to pray for me. Okay. All right, we're all straight shooters. We're all straight shooters. And that's part of having a relationship, is to be able to communicate directly.
Yes.
Right? All right. So, in Judaism, we believe that for the Messiah to be the Messiah, those things which I just laid out have to happen. There has to be world peace, right? The Jews have to come back to Israel, and the temple has to be rebuilt. That's the definition of the person who's the Messiah. If those things haven't happened, then the Messiah has yet to come, or if he did come, right, the generation wasn't ready for him, so he didn't reveal himself. In every generation there is a Messiah. The question is, was the generation fitting for that Messiah to reveal himself? Right? It's on us. It's on us. That's one of the things about, and I don't think we're very different here in Christianity and Judaism. It's a personal responsibility. It's a personal responsibility. If we don't live up to our side of the deal, then God doesn't have to live up to his side of the deal until he has to, because for his own sovereignty. Until it gets to be a point where he's like, okay, you guys messed it up for long enough. So when those three things happen, that person's the Messiah. That could be you, it could be me, it could be you, it could be whoever it is. Whoever makes it happen, though. If someone hasn't made it happen, then it's not the Messiah. And that's the Jewish viewpoint. We pray for the Messiah, we want the Messiah, we expect the Messiah. One of the 13 pillars of belief from the Rambam, who's one of the greatest rabbis of many, many generations ago, and the greatest rabbis who ever lived. He put the 13 principles of belief. One of those principles of belief is you have to expect, hope for, realize there's the power that the Messiah can come at any second. If you don't believe that, then you're not a believing Jew. You're not even a believing Jew, right? So we have to expect it, we have to believe it, we have to know it's true. At the same time, there's a definition of how it's true. And when that happens, that's the Messiah. Good?
Thank you.
Okay.
Doug, would you like to ask that question?
Add to the question about,
Anything?
I know we're running.
Follow-up?
No, I'm
Okay.
good. I think
Yes, we are. We're out of time. Thank you, guys. I think now we're going to transition to...
Wait, he wanted to know how to pray for me.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, definitely. How can we pray?
I mean, we say that actually the ability of prayer amongst non-Jews is extremely strong. Monotheist non-Jews have an extremely strong power, perhaps a stronger power of prayer than believing Jews do. I mean, it's a great thing, so I'm going to answer it. I'm not going to just not answer it. So you say this is basically how you pray in Judaism, right? You have to start off with praise, right? God, you're great, you're huge, you're wonderful, amazing what you've done with this world. It's unbelievable how big the world is, how majestic it is. Great. So then you get into the request. I want Richard Green, right? My Hebrew name is Yerachmiel. I want him to be successful in his endeavors. I want anyone else to be successful in their endeavors. And then you say, thank you, God. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Thank you for everything you've done for the world. And we appreciate you. And we know you're the source of all blessing. And we appreciate and we thank you for everything you do. And that's how you can pray for anybody, not just me.
I will add a quick comment as a Christian speaking to Christians who hang out with rabbis in Israel and have friends like Rabbi Green here. We think of Israel as like all the other nations. We think about, from a Christian standpoint, we think about evangelism, but Israel is not like every other nation. It was called to be different. Israel is the only nation where God says that all of Israel will be saved. We have a Western understanding of what we think that phrase means, but I think that probably God has a different definition. Now, I'm not saying that your definition is wrong, or that I'm not saying about anything about what we believe to be the sacrifice of Yeshua, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that when Israel became a nation in 1948, nobody believed it was going to happen in a bomb shelter in Tel Aviv right before a major invasion. God has his ways, God has his plans. And so if it's the only nation where God is assuring their salvation on some level, whatever that means, all of Israel will be saved, then as Christians, I have seen personally in my involvement in the land when Christian groups come to do their Christian thing, and I say that very kindly and lovingly to my Christian brothers and sisters, I know of large missions organizations that have tried to treat Israel just the way that they treat every other nation, and it fails. Because the calling of Israel is to be unique and to be different than every other nation, and when we treat them like every other nation, we find ourselves not falling in line with what God has already said he's going to do. So when it comes to being involved in Israel, in my mind, as a Christian, it becomes less about a particular ideology and more about, God, what is it that you're doing in this land right now, and how, because you obviously have a plan, you're obviously doing unique, supernatural, sovereign aspects, how is it that I can be involved? And so when I speak at events like this, I'm involved with Palestinian Christians, I'm involved with Orthodox Jews, I'm involved with Messianic Jews, I'm involved with Bedouin communities and Druze, and ultimately the question is, whose side are you on? Are you pro-Israel? Are you pro-Palestine? Are you this? Are you that? And it's the same question that Joshua wants to know when a guy shows up in the middle of the night with a sword. And the first question is, are you for us or for our enemies? And it's an odd question because God's the one that told him to go in and level the city of Jericho. And the answer of the angel of the army of the Lord of hosts, he says, no. Are you for us or for our enemies? No. But as commander of the army of the Lord of hosts, I've now come. So my point is this. As Christians, if we're believing things that are written in Ephesians 2 and 3, where we're seated with Christ in heavenly places, we're above the powers and principalities, when it comes to Israel, it becomes less about whose side are you on, and God, what is it that you're doing in this land? Because you're obviously fulfilling the most consistent and the most repeated promise in the Bible. The land is reviving, the people are coming back, the way cities are being rebuilt, the food is being produced, I mean, on and on and on. The miracles are happening right now. What is it that I can add to that? If I'm honest, I've got nothing to add. God, what are you doing, and how can I support what you're doing? And so when I'm involved in the land, whether it be with Palestinian Christians or with Muslim Palestinians who hate Israel and wondering what I'm doing there, and I was just in Shechem, Nablus, a couple weeks ago, and just had some amazing opportunities. I was in Joseph's tomb, I was doing some photography and some really just treasured places that I was just blessed to be in. But my point is that when we're there, we're going, what is God telling you to do in the land? What are you to be involved with? How is it if Yeshua teaches that it's loving God and loving your neighbor, and on those things hang all of the law of the prophets, then if you're going to love people in the land, that's a lot. How are you loving people? Are you loving Jews? Are you loving Arabs? Well, he didn't really make a separation. He's saying you're loving people and you're loving God. You follow what the Lord is telling you to do in the land. God has his own plan. That's my own view. Am I denying any aspect of Christianity? Absolutely not. Am I shrinking back from believing that Yeshua is the Jewish Messiah? I'm not. My point is that our view from our little towns and communities in the West, in a different culture, is very different than what God is doing in the Middle East. And it becomes less about trying to put Israel into our theology and more about, God, what is it that you're doing in the nation right now and how can I be a part of it? So when we're asking those types of questions, I'm not saying that we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe we are asking the wrong questions, but maybe it's time that we begin looking more at the scriptures and what God is doing, the times and the seasons that we're in, saying, God, you're doing something miraculous in the earth. The prophet said that you're going to do this with Israel as a representation to the nations. How can I be involved? So I would encourage you as Christians to take the same view. Whose side are you on? Are you for the Jews? Are you for the Arabs? I'm on God's side, and whatever he tells me to do, I'm ultimately accountable to him. With love to the Arab people that are supportive of Israel, and with love to the Jewish people who own the land because God made the promise. Does that make sense?
Yes.